Welcome to the live discussion of Oof Books' new publication with Simphiwe Ndzube Notebooks. Hey.
Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you, Christie, for making this happen. You and Oof Books rock the boat. Yeah. Excited
Thanks
for
for
the
saying
project.
that. Yeah, the book is looking really amazing. Obviously, we're recording this a bit in advance, so all of the finishing touches are being put on right now as we speak. It's very exciting.
Yeah. We're busy printing, and actually we've had already some pre-sales, which has been great. Lots of really good response. It's a first edition, so we're excited to see how we can expand. Anyhow, Christie, I'll let you lead the conversation.
More to come. Okay, well, I wrote this sweet little intro for you, which is the story of how we met, essentially. So at the very start of the pandemic, Simphiwe and I began working together on some of his various studio projects. It was a unique experience to be working alongside Simphiwe at this juncture in the sense that he was really the only person I saw that I didn't live with. We became very close, updating each other on our annoyances, joys, and introspections. We would exchange ideas and hopes for the future in a way that we might not have been able to if we weren't brought together by happenstance and a global pandemic. I like to think that this is now...
Nice cookies you cooked. You made some nice cookies. I wondered more.
But no, it's because I made cookies and I brought them to you.
Yeah, pandemic etiquettes, especially those that right in the beginning of it, it was really hard. It was nice to to have trades, people sharing what they're making, discovering within themselves. Actually, sorry, continue.
No, it's fine. We got to bring that back.
Yeah.
Need more people making cookies. If we weren't brought together by happenstance in a global pandemic. I like to think that this is now really the foundation of our friendship. We have a unique dynamic where anything is up for discussion and everything can be conversationally interconnected, from post-colonial theory to American pop stars. It was a further revelation to then see Simphiwe's notebooks. His brain works in much the same way as our conversations. He has the ability to tie together so many elements of his lived experience, the global past, and what it is to be human right now. It is thrilling to see this even more so in his note-taking. It became immediately obvious to me that this practice is...
The internet connection is unstable.
Huh? Wait, say it again?
The internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, but it's sweeping, and that's why it's interesting, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's unstable. No, it keeps going. It's all across the board. It became immediately obvious to me that this practice of keeping notes was another medium in Simphiwe's wheelhouse, and one that was just as important as a sculpture or painting. This is to say, I knew that we needed to make an object out of these notes that could then be dispersed to appreciators of Simphiwe's practice. And then I have your bio, but I feel like if people are here, they might already know. But do you want to talk about your upcoming exhibition?
Oh yeah, we just opened a show up at Nicodem in Los Angeles with the show titled Like the Snake That Fed the Chameleon. And in the show, I'm bringing together a group of installations, sculpture, some paintings with the link between photography and sculpture. And then there's an element of music. So it's like I try to create this little universe that it's a best experience in person. So if you are able to go in the next couple of weeks, the show closes March 20th, I believe. And I would definitely say you don't need to book an appointment. Turn up when the gallery is open. Enjoy, leave the judgments aside, bring your heart, and your imagination and your eyes, and enjoy the show. Take what you can take, critique what you can critique, ask some questions where there are any questions. But for me, the show is a bit of an offering. It's like a collaboration between me and my late mother, who is very important to how I create work, and tapping into those two spaces to create work that, that speaks both on a physical, tangible realm, but also taps into the spiritual, the intangible, the journeys, the beauties, the yin and the yang, the beautiful and the grotesque, the polar opposite. So the work is constantly pulling through between leaving and arriving, um, in a state of uh, moving and not moving. I guess I just said that. Anyhow, about the book. So, and then there's another show coming up in June with Denver Art Museum. So some of the works that you see in the back, those two paintings, that show is already ready and done. So we're working on a catalog that's going to be produced by Denver Museum along with this. So it's going to be nice. It's going to be 2 books. We're excited to have, and many exciting things as the year unfolds, and as we find ways to hustle the vaccine, and hopefully more hope for an exciting year going forward.
For sure, yeah. I have it noted in this little bio. Denver Art Museum show in June. Nicotine Gallery exhibition currently up through March. Yeah, quick little plug for your shows that are super good, and everyone should go to them. Anyway, so in reference to the book and to your practice in general, because obviously we'll get into this, but sketching does seem like such a basis for your practice and sort of a departure point. How long have you kept a sketchbook? Is it since like the start of your career as an artist? When did you learn this practice, and how often do you use it?
So I'd say I was introduced to sketchbook in a form of, we called it in high school, we called it a visual diary. So with the visual diary, whenever we had projects, we were given, like, we had to get 1 book to finish per semester. Every 6 months, you had to finish 1 book. And all of the projects that were at art class were broken down into, that's where your assignments are. So then that's the book that gets marked. And that was my introduction to a sketchbook. So you had to do all your research, your drawings, your referential material, and planning into your final paintings in this book. And then you hand them, you get marked, and then you start a new one, another 6 months. So then I sort of held on to the practice of, in between, also because I lived an hour away from where I was going to school. And I used to commute by train. So what I would do in the train, if I wasn't doing naughty things that high school boys and my friends used to do, part of which involved like train surfing, like very extreme, dangerous sport, risking and smoking, and sometimes getting robbed in the trains, or like, all of the things that just, I'm grateful I'm still alive, because I would have lost a limb, or, all of that.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that was some days when I was a good boy, and I would sit down and just make drawings of people in the train. So I did that a lot. I believe I have one of the sketchbooks I kept that I continued to do that was this one here. And yeah, so that's this is one of the books that I was using, but this one is, let's see, what's the year? Yeah, so when I went to art school, so I continued to take a bus, and our dorms um, were like 35 minutes away from the campus. So in between the journey shuttles, I always continued to hold a sketchbook and to draw, make studies of the whatever activities that were happening, or thoughts, or write some text, or listening to music, or note, or a lecture, making notes out of that. Then the lectures were also in the same sketchbook I used for everything. And I just continued to jot down and mix things up. So, but recently I have not been as good in. I had like a really interesting period. Like I'd finish a couple of these books, like at least like 3 or 4 a year, and page would be filled up by notes and drawings and grocery list or whatever. And now I have like, like a sketchbook like this, and just like one space is filled up with like as minimal as I can. Yeah, I wish I could continue in the same effort as I did, but because I don't take as much public transport anymore, I think that has to do with it. That now
Yeah.
it requires time, it requires a space to be attended to, and very often with how I work is that yeah, I think I'm skipping to other questions. Let me not rush it. So I've held the
Yeah.
sketchbook for that long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
not,
yeah, we can take a moment because I feel like the sketchbooks that we used, a lot of them were marked 2017, 2018. I think there was maybe one that edged into 2019. But it was interesting to see you're clearly like planning some of the exhibitions, like the way that you're sketching it out. It's like a room. So you're like creating this 3-dimensional space, and then you're placing these sculptures that you later see come to life in this sort of like flat space.
yeah. So imagining them in it. So I always draw whatever is finished. Like I would make studies of finished paintings, because sometimes what happens is when I work, I don't necessarily begin from a drawing. Sometimes the empty blank canvas or the materials, the sculpture, they through impulse and the desire to create, and to fill up the void of an empty space, I really go on and continue to work until something is finished, and answering to whether things work and they don't work compositionally, and how do they feel and what do they offer, what are they offering and what are they suggesting in terms of what they want to be. So I become and then I aid them to get to where they want to be. And then when I'm done, then I'm like, oh shit, what is this? What is this object? What is this trying to say? What's the story here? Why is this guy looking so fucked up, and also kind of joyously in some kind of space that seems to be saying something very important. So I would sit back and then start making studies of that. So I've done like studies of this one, and then eventually this one ended up going into a sculpture that I presented into the show at Nicodeme, where there's like a smoke that comes. I replaced his head with a smoke machine, and then this animal is still like really translated into a three-dimensional form. So it's interesting how even a painting that's two-dimensional but also plays with 3D gave an idea, but had to go through like drawing and sketching and playing around, and then reimagining again in actual three-dimensional form, where you can walk around, feel it, and it has a relationship with you, with its scale. Yeah.
Totally. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the next question, which is like, at what juncture will you like look back at your notes or your planning stages? Like, do those sort of like reintegrate throughout the process, or is it just kind of like a linear expansion? Like it goes from like flat space to actual space, or like oftentimes I've seen you working and you'll like, after you've created the piece, go back to your notes and like refer to these quotes that you were looking at to sort of better explain the work.
Yeah, and I think you've seen like the raw, the lazy, the stuck, the all of the things that are in between what we present eventually as a finished object. Um, so yeah, so like I said, so sometimes I'd start from like I'm listening to something on my way to the studio, news, be it music from South Africa. I listen to a lot of sound from home, what my contemporaries are making, you know, producing. And so I'll be, you know, in the space, and a line or something, or the name of the song somehow immediately connects with me in this way. And in the same way, from reading a text and only this one sentence like gives exactly a picture of a fully finished painting, then like, oh, this book is amazing, but I'm going to close it. I just like this line to take it further into my own space. So sometimes it's something like that. Then I will make a note of that on the sketchbook, which I actually never look at. You know, like the people who keep diaries, some people are able to look at them back, and some people just like pour onto them. And I tried to do another little experiment. Thinking about Salvador Dali and the surrealists' interest in the dreams, and really going into the subconscious to see what kind of visual, what the subconscious, exploring the subconscious, and like Salvador Dali would, you know, make use of his dreams where, you know, have a spoon, he'd hold on to a spoon and take a nap, and then or put something in glasses and a spoon, and then take a nap, and then just capture those first moments of like, is that a REM sleep, or like just that first of like deep sleep as you enter, and then your body loosens up and you start to dream, and then as the spoon falls into a glass, and you wake up and you quickly remember and you make sketches of that, whatever comes through. So I tried to do something like this when I wake up, and writing each and everything that I remember as much as I can. But it's a practice that started and went on and on and on. And I was like, okay, it's good. Let's try something else. But sometimes it will be different types of experiments. And then sometimes it's like a long time without even writing anything, just painting without even thinking about the paintings that I'm making, and just like impulsively creating and creating and creating. And then sometimes I run out and I'm trying to fish for ideas, and the sketchbook and all of the things I used to think about, they're always great as a reminder to look back. So, oh, flip, I was thinking about this. This was what was going on in my head, which are some of the things that, like, you know, I'm kind of beating myself onto it, but it's like, okay, just keep writing whatever comes to your mind, so that these things are beautiful as markers of times, and they're so nice too when you run out of ideas and you look back, and then it's like, oh, flip, that drawing or that line, these were the things that were important to me, and you kind of are able to bring yourself back into an old self, or bring the old self back to your current self as we continue to go and move forward.
One of the quotes that you had written that I chose to put into the book is by Lewis Gordon on Frantz Fanon. So the quote itself is, "Oppressed people are constantly trying to fix themselves, to heal, and have not gotten to the point of questioning the system that creates that." Now, it builds upon a quote you use often in various interviews from Fanon, calling certain people the wretched of the earth. I like that you then build upon Gordon's quote on this page with your own quote saying, "You are not always the problem." I like these quotes in conjunction because it feels like a great example of how your practice works. You were able to take classical references, add modern references, and then put it through your own contemporary lens. Can you talk more about reference in your work? So that's kind of a sweeping question. I know you already talked about surrealism and Dali and like fantasy. But I think specifically just looking at this, like the fact that there are layers of reference and nothing is just like, everything is sort of put through you, put through culture, put through everything. Like nothing is quite so straightforward. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like very serious in lectures that for the most part I really don't understand. But there's like I don't know, there's a desire that wants to know what the intellectual professors want to say about some situations and how they are able to word. And so when I was in art school, I think I was really much more interested in this, in the academic space and what the academics had to say. So Gramsci, Fanon were super integral in how I was able to look at the South African landscape to understand what were the commonalities of what Frans Fanon wrote about, you know, Metinique's experience, you know, with the French, and he's, you know, listening to someone who's actually writing in reflection and applying that into where I was living. What I thought was very, very interesting. So I would just make notes of what I think is makes sense to me, and I could use it to make good of the work. And there were so many conversations back home that Black students, we were talking a lot about decolonization. We were talking a lot about decolonizing the curriculum, because in South Africa, you know, we were at a university that was teaching us to be able to participate in a global conversation. So most of the discourse that we had to learn was Western material, and nothing was from home. So we were trying to find ways in which we could just like, how do we use that to apply so that we are able to better understand our society and where we live, and deal with the frustrations of a particular place from a visual perspective, from an artist perspective, and how we could be better useful in our own societies. If then we are taught material that is even far so distant, you know, could be useful, but where do we have a space to find material that is able to better make us understand our situation? But I'm grateful for having gone to art school and having gone to learn about these great speakers, and none of them I remember what they said. But it's interesting. Some stuff that I thought I understood is on the notes somewhere, somehow. So we found one and put it in there for this one. So it has a significant place.
You clearly have a great understanding in all of these things. You're being very humble. Okay, so to talk about materiality, one thing that I see recurring in a lot of your paintings is duct tape. And one of my favorite moments in the book is that we got a little piece of duct tape in there. There's a little reproduction of duct tape. And you know what? I have never asked you why duct tape. So why duct tape?
It's interesting because, like, when I was making a lot of the work I was making back home in South Africa, in Cape Town, most of the subject matter I was dealing with it was like I would say I was working around a disembodied body, and a fractured, disembodied, broken up, and incomplete body.
Mm.
So that was my subject matter, and then the duct tape materials that had to do conceptually with repair, with fixing, and temporary as it might seem, or it became important. So duct tape, band-aids, stitching, and thinking about sutures, thinking about ways in which you can make something fixed and complete, even if it's temporary. So then the duct tape was like, I'm gonna put a duct tape to put anything together in between. And it's interesting too that the duct tape was used I think in World War II to fix a plane that flew back into war. I don't know what part of it, but like it must have had like an air leak, and they covered it with duct tape. How strong they are.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Some interesting stories of duct tape, but duct tape, and then I started, when I came here, I was very much influenced, actually, literally influenced by Wangechi Mutu's use of duct tape, and she had been using it in her work, like the leopard prints especially, and she has been such an integral artist to me, for me, to model my practice after. I related to her work even before I came to the US. Mm-hmm. And the mythological explorations, the fantastic, the hybridity of bodies that she's working with, like this, I feel and understood her work. So like, couldn't help but open to some of the materialities she is working with too, to kind of see how I can also further like add to my own. And then I started pushing it towards like the light blue peacock, and that's what I've been using a lot to create these textures onto water on paintings. But somehow also on the sketchbooks, they become these in between moments of collage, of breaking things apart, of pasting seemingly desperate, instead of using glue or print, instead of using glue to paste a picture, a collage, using tape adds a texture to it that somehow speaks back into the relationship between painting, and then everything somehow is unified. And the visual language is somehow carried through the sketchbook, through the paintings, into the sculptures, and hopefully, how would one translate duct tape in sound? Imagine. Anyhow,
it does make a lot of noise. You're the artist. I just use duct tape. So.
Yeah.
All right. One other thing. I feel like this was also like one thing I learned through looking through your notebooks, which again, perhaps was like a little bit of an invasive process for you, but I feel like we got something very beautiful out of it. Was that you're secretly a poet. You're like, you wrote, is that poem that's like the 2017 poem that's like towards the end of the book? It's called Dance. Is that a poem that you wrote?
Oh, Dance, we shall, in the rhythm of the,
Yeah.
There's some lyrical isms. But no, I would not make a claim about that. I don't understand poetry at all, but I connect to it and I see the visuals of it, and I think it's so close to painting. Poetry painting. I don't know. I'm so convinced in my head that like a brushstroke can be broken down into such incredible wording. And if there's an effort, if maybe if I do put an effort, maybe some good poetry could come. Maybe later, maybe when I have more space to think. But I'm really drawn into poetry, and we used to write, like I used to write rap music and poems in primary school, but also because we had to, you know, some things we just had to because you're in school.
Makes sense.
But yeah, maybe there is a secret to be unleashed there later in life.
Yeah. Ooh, I feel like that's kind of a good note to leave it on. Future life poetry. Cool. Well, thank you for discussing all of this with me. I wanted to do a brief closeout / plug for upcoming OOF things. For those that don't know, OOF is a space in downtown Los Angeles dedicated to exploring the overlap between visual art, the written word, and the form of the book. You may have caught on to that by now. We have an upcoming exhibition with Lanice Howard opening at OOF on March 13th, and that is available by appointment only. So make your appointments now. Woo. Cool.
Amazing. Check it out. It's beautiful. If not, on the internet, Instagram, follow the page OOF Books.
Well, thank you so much. This was a great talk. I feel like this was like a more serious version of what we do, just us.
It's pretty serious than actually what you usually do.
Yeah.
We are growing. Oh, no, this is good.
Yeah, we've really elevated ourselves today.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you for your time. We're excited. I hope you are able to get the notebooks. And it's a tiny little project, an attempt, a beautiful attempt, not yet a representation of the whole thing that is stacks and stacks and stacks of many notes. If you respond very well, we might be able to extend the production and make it even more crazier, because it's gonna get crazy, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.